Good day everyone. We are the Group G and today we are presenting a very important and timely topic which is the business ethics in emerging markets. As the global companies continue to expand into fast-growing economies like Brazil, China and India, ethical challenges such as corruption, labor rights, and environmental sustainability become more and more relevant. Our presentation will explore these issues and discuss how business can act responsibly while staying competitive in these markets. But before we dive into the topic, let us introduce our researchers. We have Regine Agustin, Anshin Aquino, Pauline Gloria, and yours truly, Christian Capulong. We hope this discussion gives you a deeper understanding of the importance of ethical practices in emerging economies and why it matters for global business today. We will now begin to our chapter 1 that focuses on an introduction. In this chapter, we will provide an overview of our study, including the background of information, the significance of the project, and the objective we aim to achieve. Our research is centered on the business ethics in emerging markets, a topic that highlights the ethical challenges faced by companies operating in a fast-growing economies such as corruption, labor issues, and environmental concerns. Through this introduction, we aim to give you a clear understanding of why this study is important, what question we intend to answer, and how it can contribute to responsible and sustainable business practices in developing regions. So let's begin to background information. Next slide po. So for the background of information, the first bullet, ethical challenges. In emerging markets like Brazil, China, and India, issues such as corruption, low labor standards, and environmental risks are common because of these challenges. Running a business become more complicated. Companies need to be cautious in making decisions to avoid breaking laws and to ensure proper treatment of employees and the environment. So for the second bullet naman, reputation and risk management. If a company does not follow ethical standards, its reputation can be damaged, not just locally but also internationally. It may also face lawsuits or legal problems. That's why being responsible and ethical in business is important to avoid risk and negative publicity.
The main goal of this study is to look into the ethical problems that companies often deal with in emerging economies. These are countries that are growing quickly but might have strong system yet. As businesses expand in these areas, they can face challenges like corruption, weak regulation, or unfair labor practices. This can create serious risks for both the companies and the people in those communities. This research wants to understand not just what those problems are, but also how companies can handle them in a responsible and ethical way. One key question we're trying to answer is what effective strategies can corporations use to promote ethical behavior and avoid ethical risks in these rapid developments? So, it's not just about pointing out what's wrong, it's all about finding real solutions that help business grow ethically. So, next slide.
So, thank you, Miss Aquino. Then for the objectives naman, the first goal is to know the usual ethical problems that businesses face in fast-growing countries. So, these markets have special challenges like corruption or unfair labor. So, we want to know what problems companies are dealing with. So, next, we want to understand how doing good or bad thing can affect a business. If a company does the right thing, does it help them grow? And if they do the bad things naman, how does it hurt their name and future success? So it's important to know this to help businesses choose the right path. Then next, we also want to find ways for companies to do better when it comes to being honest and fair. So what good habits or rules they follow to make sure they always do the right thing. And lastly, we want to look at real companies that do good in their business. By learning from what they do, we can see the steps they took to be both ethical and successful. So it's a good way to see what's really works. So then for the next slide, here is Kapulong. Thank you.
So thank you, Miss Colleen. So for the significance of the project, so first bullet, critical for global business. Understanding ethical or moral issues in developing countries is a very important for smooth, responsibly, and long-term business operations around the world. So for the second bullet, focus on key issues. The research focuses on the serious problems such as corruption, labor exploitations, and environmental destruction in countries where industrial growth is happening rapidly. So next slide po. So for the practical guidance, the content provides practical advice or strategies that can help business make this ethical decision and stay compliant with the regulation. By following these strategies, business can ensure that they operate in a way that is both competitive and responsibly. In short, it's about giving business the tools and knowledge they can need to act in a way that both profitable and ethically sounds, all while following necessary laws and regulations. So for the next slide, here's Regina Agustin.
So let's discuss to the structure of the projects or the brief outline every chapter. So in chapter 1, it provides background information, the purpose of the study, objectives, and the significance of studying business ethics in emerging markets. And it sets the stage for the entire project. So in chapter 2, it discusses the key concepts relevant to the topic, defining terms, explaining processes and frameworks, and providing examples to enhance understanding. And it aims to build a solid foundation of knowledge. So in chapter 3, this chapter details the methods used for data collection and explaining how the research data was obtained. In chapter 4, it presents a conclusion summarizing key points and reiterating research objectives. And it also offers recommendations based on the findings. So in chapter 5, this chapter provides a concise overview of the entire project, highlighting key findings and the potential impact of its implementation. So, in addition to the chapters, the project includes a section for references and an appendices containing raw data, questionnaires, interview transcripts, and other supporting materials. Okay, so next slide, let's have Ashlyn Aquino.
For the task allocation, we distribute the work among group members so that everyone had a role and the project would go smoothly. Some members work on the first part, explaining what the study is about and why it matters. Others focus on the important ideas and concepts related to business ethics in emerging markets. The members who are good with research handled the data collection and analysis, making sure everything was clear and organized. Then other members work on the discussion part where we talk about what the result mean and gave suggestion based on them. In the end, we all help put together the summary and conclusion. This way of dividing the tasks help us stay organized and make sure we finish everything on time. So that's all for the chapter 1. Let's move on to chapter 2.
So this chapter 2 explain the importance, ideas, and terms about business ethics in emerging markets. So it gives the meaning of keyword, explain useful system and theories, and show some challenges and opportunities that companies face in these fast-growing countries. So this idea will help readers understand the background and purpose of the study. So let's proceed to the next slide. So for the definition of terms, the first is business ethics. So this is refers to the principles that guides businesses to act in the right way, like being honest, fair, and responsible in their actions. So it's basically about knowing what right and wrong in business decisions and making sure that everything the company does is ethical and does not harm others. So the next is emerging markets. So these are countries that grow fast and have developing economies like Brazil, India, and the Philippines. In emerging markets, the growth of business is fast-paced and they also face many challenges when it comes to ethics, and good governance. So, next slide po. Then next is CSR or Corporate Social Responsibility. So CSR is when companies take responsibility for their action not just to earn money, but also to help the community and the environment. So this means they are not only thinking about their business, but also about how their action affects society and the planet. So then next is corruption. So corruption is refers to unethical or illegal behavior like bribery or and cheating, which is common in places with weak governance system. That's why in some countries, businesses need to be extra careful because corruption might affect how they operate. So then next slide po. And last is labor exploitation. So labor exploitation is when workers are treated unfairly, like getting very low pay, so working in dangerous condition or not being given the rights. So this is serious problem in many industries, and companies must make sure they treat their worker properly to avoid this. So that's all for definition of terms. Then for the explanation of process, framework, or system related to business ethics in emerging, I'm here to discuss it. So first is stakeholder theory. So stakeholder theory is about thinking beyond just the shareholders. So businesses should also consider the interests of their employees, customers, supplier, and even the community. So it's about being fair and responsible to all the people connected to the company, not just the owner or investor. So in emerging markets, this help businesses build better relationship and trust because it show their care about everyone, not just making money. And next is ethical decision-making models. So these are a step-by-step process that helps managers and leaders make the right choice when facing ethical problems. So it helps them think about the issue, get the right facts, consider who is affected, and then decide what action fits their values. So in short, it's a guide to help companies make good and honest decision in difficult situation. Then next slide po. Then next is codes of ethics and compliance system. So codes of ethics are rules of, or guidelines made by companies to make sure everyone follow good behavior. So many global companies use these codes, especially in countries where local law are not strongly enforced. So these rules show what kind of action are expected. And the compliance system check if people are really follow them. So there are also training to help employee understand what's right and what's wrong. So then lastly is sustainability and ESG or environmental social governance framework. So many businesses today are following global sustainability goals. So like the UN Sustainability Development Goal or SDGs. So ESG framework help company check their long-term impact on the environment and on people. So it means they don't just care about profit, but also about how they help the planet and society. So ESG is becoming more important, especially in emerging markets, because it shows a company commitment to doing good and being responsible. So that's all for explanation of process, framework, or system related to business ethics in emerging. So here is Miss Agustin to discuss the next slide. Thank you.
So let's discuss the challenges of ethical businesses in emerging markets. Doing business in emerging markets presents unique ethical challenges. Rampant corruption, including bribery, forces companies to confront difficult ethical dilemmas. Weak regulatory frameworks and enforcement create loopholes that allow unethical behavior to flourish. Cultural differences require sensitivity and adoption of business practices, but this must be done without compromising core ethical principles. And finally, the conflict between global ethical standards and local business practices necessitates careful navigation to ensure ethical conduct without alienating local stakeholders or hindering business operations. In short, ethical businesses operating in these markets must be vigilant, adaptable, and committed to their principles in the face of significant obstacles. Okay, next slide po. Opportunities of ethical business in emerging markets. So despite the challenges, emerging markets offer significant opportunities for ethical businesses. By adopting sustainable development practices, companies can create positive environmental and social impacts within local communities, building a strong brand reputation. Ethical conduct fosters trust among stakeholders, including customers, employees, and investors, leading to a competitive advantage. Furthermore, ethical businesses can be agents of positive societal change, contributing to greater equality, sustainability, and overall progress in these developing economies. So, in the essence, ethical business practices are not only morally right, but also strategically advantageous in emerging markets. So, next slide po. Okay, so let's discuss the illustrative example, which is the microfinance in rural India. So, microfinance in rural India serves as a compelling case study illustrating the complex interplay between ethics and business in emerging markets. While microfinance initiatives aim to empower impoverished communities by providing access to small loans, their success critically depends on responsible lending practices and a strong ethical foundation. And without this, the potential for exploitation and unsustainable debt burdens is high. Therefore, stronger regulations and a greater emphasis on ethical business practices are essential to mitigate risk and ensure that microfinance achieve its goals of poverty reduction and economic growth. So this example shows that ethical considerations are not merely an add-on, but a fundamental requirement for achieving positive social and economic outcomes in developing economies. So the next slide will be discussed by Mr. Christian Capullo.
So this chapter 3 explores the critical role of business ethics in emerging markets. As the companies expand into rapidly developing regions, they face unique ethical challenges including the corruption, labor issues, and environmental concerns. This chapter will provide insight into navigating these challenges responsibly, ensuring businesses operate ethically while maintaining competitiveness and sustainability in these dynamic environments. So let's begin with the data collection. This data collection was collected for a study on a business ethics in emerging markets. We use a Likert scale survey, which is the common methods to measure people's opinions. Participants were asked questions on they choose how much they agree or disagree with each one using the following scale. 4 strongly agree, 3 agree, 2 disagree, and 1 strongly disagree. This method helps researchers understand what people think or feel about ethical issues in growing or developing markets. So next slide po.
This presentation displays data on business ethics, focusing on respondent profiles and their views on ethical practices. So first, we have here the profile of respondents. This pie chart reveals that 92% of respondents operate locally, 8% operate both locally and internationally, and 0% operate solely internationally. This suggests a predominantly local businesses focus within the surveyed sample. So next slide. The first graph shows a strong agreement means a high proportion of respondents agree that their company has a clear and comprehensive ethical policy for operations. This indicates a positive perception of the company's ethical framework. The second graph reveals a concerning trend. A significant number of respondents agree that unethical practices like bribery, corruption, and fraud are common. This finding suggests a potential gap between the company's stated ethical policy and the realities on the ground. Further investigation is needed to understand the reason behind this discrepancy. So next slide. The first graph suggests that most respondents find local government regulations sufficient. This implies a degree of satisfaction with the regulatory environment in which the business operates. In the second graph, indicates a relatively high of agreement that environmental sustainability is a key consideration in business strategy. This reflects a growing awareness and prioritization of environmental concerns within the surveyed companies or businesses. So next slide. The first graph demonstrates a significant portion of respondents agreeing that company has faced reputational damage due to unethical practices. This suggests that unethical action have had tangible negative effect on the company's public image and credibility. In the second graph shows a concerning number of respondents acknowledging instances of unethical behavior from suppliers or partners. This indicates a potential vulnerability in the company's supply chain where unethical practices may be infiltrating the business. So next slide. So in the first graph indicates that many respondents recognize the significant gap between the local and international ethical standards. This suggests that the company's ethical practices might not align with globally accepted best practices, potentially exposing them to greater risk. The second graph shows a positive trend with a notable portion of respondents agreeing that the company has implemented stronger internal controls. This is a constructive response to address the identified ethical shortcomings, indicating proactive step toward improvement. So next slide. So for the last two graphs displays a positive response to the increased training programs for employees and partners. This underscores the company's commitment to enhancing ethical awareness and understanding among its workforce and collaborators. In the second graph, or last graph, shows a positive reaction to the strengthened due diligence process when selecting partners and suppliers. This signifies proactive measures to prevent future instances of unethical behavior from external parties. Overall, the result shows that the businesses has encountered unethical behavior from suppliers and partners, leading to damage its reputations. Through the mostly they are locals, they know that they have big gaps between local and international ethics standards, suggesting that the company to strengthen internal controls. To address these issues, they increase training and being more selective in choosing partners. The data highlights the ethical challenges companies face and the steps needed to uphold standards and protect their reputation. So, next slide.
Okay, so let's have the findings and observation. So the company says it's committed to ethical business, but the reality is different. So a survey shows most people don't think local laws are strong enough to prevent unethical behavior. And bribery, corruption, and fraud are common. So the company acknowledges instances of unethical supplier and collaborator conduct, including labor exploitation, and environmental damage, which have negatively impacted its reputation. So, since its operations are largely confined to local markets, this area is identified as a key risk zone for ethical violations. Next slide po. So let's proceed to the trends. So a significant trend shows high levels of unethical business practices within the company in the broader emerging markets where it operates. Weak local regulations and inadequate enforcement contribute to this problem. Despite claims of improved internal controls, the company's supply chain shows a failure to prevent unethical activities, indicating a gap between stated policies and actual practices. So, the resulting reputational damage directly links unethical behavior to negative impacts on the company's image and public standing. Okay, so next slide po. So let's discuss the comparison with theoretical frameworks. So the weak regulatory environment and widespread unethical norms support institutional theory, which emphasizes how formal and informal institutions shape organizational behavior. So the discrepancy between the company's stated ethical policy and its actual practices suggests a potential agency problem where management's interests diverge from those of shareholders, leading to ethically questionable decisions. And finally, the reputational damage highlights the importance of stakeholder theory, which stresses the need to consider the interests of all stakeholders: customers, employees, suppliers, and the wider community, not just maximizing shareholder value. Okay, next slide po. Okay, so let's discuss the challenges faced. So while the analysis provides valuable insights, it's important to of course acknowledge the certain limitations. So the study's reliance on self-reported survey data means that the findings might not fully represent the complete picture of ethical behavior within the company. And additionally, without knowing the number of respondents and the overall response rate, it's difficult, of course, to draw broad conclusions about the entire population. Further research using different methods, such as in-depth interviews, could provide a more comprehensive understanding of the underlying causes and motivations behind the observed behaviors. And finally, the analysis primarily shows relationships between factors and unethical behavior rather than definitively proving cause and effect. Okay, next slide po.
So, thank you, Miss Agustin. And for the last part, the justification of data collection method. So, first question is, why was this method chosen? So, we decided to use a survey because it's a very effective way to get honest feedback from people who actually work in the business industry. So, through survey, we can collect answer from many people at the same time, people who have real experience with business ethics. So they have first-hand knowledge of the challenges. So the answer are based on real situation, not just theory. So it's also a fast, convenient, and practical way to understand ethical issue in emerging markets. Then next is about reliability and validity of data. So the data we collected is reliable because we ask first people who really work in business world. So these are professionals who are involved in daily businesses decision and face ethical challenges regularly. So their answer are not just guesses, they are based on actual experience. So since they are directly affected by this issue, we can trust their insight and use them confidently in our research. This next slide is about ethical consideration. So we made sure the whole process followed ethical rules. First, we asked for permission before giving the survey to participants. So we clearly explained what the study was about, and we made sure they understood how their answer would be used. So we also guaranteed that all responses would stay confidential so they would feel safe answering. So after we collected the data, we kept it secure and used it only for this research to protect their privacy.
So that concludes our presentation on business ethics in emerging markets. Thank you for all your time and attention.